Pope checked into a hospital in Rome complaining of having trouble breathing, and he's going to need a few days of treatment there.
At a time when the world is seen as careening rapidly toward a new, uncertain world order, where the threat of war, climate change, social injustices, and global uncertainty seem to strike heavier on our cylinders, there is a man unchanged by these transformations, heading an institution that has arguably influenced the world for 2,000 years, the Catholic Church. Arguably the most important figure in the Vatican today is Pope Francis, the first pope from Americas who has reinterpreted how a head of a church should be. Since his election in 2013, the Pope's reign has mostly been defined by his work on the renewal of the Church, a justice and stability, as well as the preservation of individuals who are most vulnerable. However, we still see 80-year-old Pope Francis, who worries about his health and goes through great difficulties as a head of the Catholic Church, encourages millions of people to make this world a kinder place. In this video, you will learn more about Pope Francis, his background, difficulties, achievements, and how he transcends the world and the Church even to date. Welcome to a series that aims to examine one of the most influential personalities of the past few decades. Early life of the first Jesuit Pope, Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Pope Francis, date of birth, December 17, 1936. Place of birth, Buenos Aires, Argentina, parents of Italian origin. This family that he came from, while not well off, one can say they were a family that believed in education and hard work. His childhood was shy, which in his papal tenure manifested itself as humility. Therefore, although born in a working-class family and growing up in a neighborhood fully aware of social issues in Argentina, Bergoglio, it would make poverty and inequality the key elements of Huckleberry's outlook on life that he got when he was yet really young. Pope Francis has always been a devoted Catholic, and it began at a young age. He was very young, and his close relation was with his grandmother, who was a religious lady and formed his religious personality. He joined the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, the religious order at the age of 21, and was known for its force in educational, social justice, and service. In the next years, Bergoglio would go through the strict formation that was going to turn him into a priest, and afterwards, a cardinal. The manner of being a Jesuit meant strict intellectual approach, recognition of social justice principles, and determination and practice of spirituality. Pope Francis's courses in theology and philosophy show a pursuit of solutions to the world's major issues. A virtue from this book was the writings of Saint Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, through his meditation of God in all things. Bergoglio received an education in Jesuit tradition and echoed his main aspects of work in future papacy as an education missionary and social activist, as well as the aspect of humility. In 1998, Bergoglio was promoted to the higher post of the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. While he might have been a man of few words and thus inconspicuous, especially to his enemies, he led with an aim of, first of all, understanding his people, especially the poor. He went to the houses of the poor and spoke for them as individuals, and he traveled to work by subway. He is a simple man living in a moderate apartment, instead a huge palace archbishop's home. He was personally devoted to the fight against poverty and minimum living standard, and this reflected in his everyday behaviors, and thus became a man respected, not only in Argentina but in all over the world. When elected as the 266th Pope in 2013, Bergoglio chose to be known as Francis after Saint Francis of Assisi, the patron saint famed for his renunciation, simple lifestyle, and commitment to the marginalized poor people. This decision was not just a figurative one. I believe that he personally believed in frugal lifestyle, service to the poor, and use of non-violent means when solving conflicts. His papacy would be characterized by such values for more social justice, stewardship of the environment, and dialogue with other religions. The unconventional features of the papacy of the Pope. When in March 2013 the former Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, was elected Pope, he announced a new approach to the papacy. His election was historic. Not only is he the first Pope from America, but he is known for the simple and reformative life. Since the election of Pope Francis, who began his papacy with the balcony speech, he symbolized a new image of papacy that is more individualistic, relation-centered, and more contextual than the previous image of the papacy. Probably one of the first and most conspicuous things that decided Pope Francis was his abode. He no longer chooses to reside in the papal palace, but in the Vatican guest house. This decision can be realized as the symbolic denial of the monumental and sophisticated imagery always associated with the papacy. It was not for Pope Francis to wear simpler and less flashy attire as a preference, but as a reflection of what he was proposing to the Church. His deeds were a clear sign that the Church should not be for the rich but for the helpless, the diseased, the despised. Interestingly, Pope Francis's democratic reform also included the Vatican itself. He managed a major reform of the Vatican administration, which had crumbled for years on corruption, inefficiency, and opaqueness. They said he tried to enhance efficiency, transparency, and fight fraudulence in the management of finances. Undoubtedly, the most significant rotation was a creation of a new office for supervising the financial condition of the Vatican, which was both political and required. Aside from the Vatican, Pope Francis had set his purpose to take the Church to the contemporary generation. He also said a lot about embracing the people and having the discussions, whether with the members of the Church or from another branch, for he was a Catholic. He has really encouraged and embraced everybody regardless of their religion, the non-Christians such as the Muslims, Jews, even the Buddhists. The current Pope, John Paul II, has also addressed many times on the need to respect other people's faith, and has often worked hard to make people of other faiths to respect other people's faith, and this has earned him respect from people of all religion. Trying to bring the changes in the Church and make its relation to the world more liberal, Pope Francis still encounters a lot of resistance from the different conservative forces. Conservatives have considered him liberal concerning divorce, remarriage, and women's functions in the Church. Some have even accused him of watered-down Christ teachings so as to fit the New Age culture. However, Pope Francis has not lost sight of the goal that the Church is to be compassionate and welcoming of change, but does not have to sacrifice for change for the principles of the Church. Health challenges and aging, the burden of the papacy. Even more concerning has been the Pope Francis's health as he experiences old age period in his entire life. Because of his age and high level of physical activity, the Pope, who at the time of writing stands 87 years old, has had several issues with his health. He has also developed problems getting around, especially in recent years with sciatica, which is a painful nerve condition in the lower back and legs. Still, it does not seem like Pope Francis is planning on slowing down anytime soon. He has not stopped his meeting with the public and leaders, as well as celebrating Mass for his followers. Besides sciatica in 2021, Pope Francis had surgery for a colon disease. This controversial operation served only to remind people again and again of the Pope's weakness, of a man in an advanced stage that the position he occupies has dealt severely with. However, they have not let health issues dampen their spirits, especially Pope Francis, who continues to endure his papacy with a lot of strength and vigor. His health has also raised awareness of life situations in old age and the problems of the papacy. The job of the Pope is tiring, time-consuming, and involves traveling, meeting people for long periods, and being dedicated to the worldwide Church. Pope Francis is a relatively new figure, but old age has not bypassed him, and it became necessary to scale down his activities and transfer some duties to like-minded people. But he has never looked back ever since, and has remained focused on his assignment. He has endured and sustained fully the burden of the papacy, resilient with his faith and spiritual might. Privately, the Pope has spoken about questions of old age, about dying, about the transience of life, and about the need for a renewal of spirit. These reflections have actually made him more sensitive to other people, especially in their sickness and suffering. Whether it is painful, Pope Francis, like any other human being going through such ordeals that have made him understand the needs to have a caring leader who also caress the elderly and the diseased. Fails of faith and individual losses. Of course, like any person, there have been some issues in the personal life of Pope Francis. Despite his faith and determination, he has struggled through many trials that have challenged his belief, as well as his administration. Education was the foremost important facet in his life, as one of the most devastating personal misfortunes he endured include the death of his mother Regina in 1981. He lost his mother while still young, and has highlighted throughout this paper how this experience molded him regarding the loss and faith. There is another remarkable point in Pope Francis's life which this time worries him. In 1998, his dear friend and confidant, Cardinal Eduardo Pironio, died. Juan Pizon Pironio influenced the cardinal in the spiritual and the theological impression of the Pope's life. Incidentally, the death of Cardinal Pironio gave a moment of contemplation to the Pope Francis, as it made him realize how limited our time is in this world and how we should spend that limited time in a righteous way without any pride. These personal stories have played out in his formation of what he believes the Church needs to be in the world today. He has repeatedly shared about the need for suffering with people or being with suffering people, the feminist and the oppressed. He himself has personally lost a lot, thus enabling him to have a prove up on the human beings, making him to use what he has realized all through and guiding him in this about papacy. Aside from companions' loss, Pope Francis has also faced numerous challenges inside the church institution. His attempts at cleaning the Vatican, the more recent cases being those of clerical sexual abuse, have placed him a crossroads with the powers that be in the church. Such attempts have polarized observers and leaders of the church, while the Pope had to play both external political games of the Vatican and the internal church reforms, which he considers necessary to adapt the church to the modern world. Nonetheless, the above trials have not shaken Pope Francis in his stand for the church. He has always advocated for unity, restoration, and repentance within the church family and around the world. His positive outlook on life and ability to reach many people for help has brought millions of followers. His desire to address some of the major problems of the church has given him both fans and bold critics. How global crises have been managed by the Pope. Since his election, Pope Francis has had to confront some of the greatest crises of the 21st century world. They say that the worst time of his administration began with the year 2020, when the virus known as COVID-19 started spreading across the globe. The pandemic that started early this year affected the global society in all aspects: health, mortality, and economically. However, in the face of this crisis, the world has never been in deficit of hope, and none perhaps best embodies this hope as the Pope Francis. He guided the church during pandemic, bringing hope to many through his sermons to the congregation. In the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Pope called for compassion to the neglected vulnerable groups, such as the old, the poor, and the sick. He also demanded unity among the world states, and policies should focus on saving more lives. Vaccines should be distributed impartially. His message was clear: the pandemic became global, and we got to fight it together, with a sense of compassion, solidarity, and justice. Nevertheless, there are a number of other pressing topics which have been commented on by Pope Francis. These include pandemic, climate change, poverty, migration, and war. For instance, his encyclica entitled Laudato Si, issued in 2015, he has asked the whole world to act immediately to the environmental problems. He has also been very specific on the fact that efforts to fight climate change and protect the planet for the future generation require international cooperation. Pope Francis's journey has been one of faith, challenge, and unwavering dedication to serving the Church and the world. From his humble beginnings in Argentina to his papacy in the Vatican, he has been a beacon of hope, mercy, and compassion. As we reflect on his life and leadership, we are reminded of the power of humility, the importance of social justice, and the need for a church that is truly a force for good in the world. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insights into the lives of extraordinary leaders and their impact on the world.